Welcome to Life Force Canada. I'm Karen Klassen. For those of you who are here, please say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're from. We're educating our members how to create a parallel society where you exit out of the corrupt systems and are shown step by step how to free yourself. It's a journey that we're all on, and we've been indoctrinated for decades. Remember to stay focused on the life that you desire. This is a mind control system that we're in, and this system is designed to keep you distracted and focused on fear-based outcomes. You are a powerful creator, and we must all have the discipline to keep our mind above the fear that's being perpetuated. Focus on what you want to see, what you want your life to look like. Take those moments to meditate and reflect, to shift your energy the moment that you're feeling what I call below the line. Now, if you have yet to become a private member of Life Force Canada, I highly recommend you do. We have powerful courses coming up that are going to show you how to move out of the public jurisdiction and show you how to express the language of sovereignty. If you do not stop participating in the political beast system, well, their beast system, you will continue to have a master. The only thing the political system does, and we all know this, is it just divides us. That is the agenda, right? You do not need a master. Our main objective is to step into the correct jurisdiction and authority, and you are your own authority. As you declare your own authority under natural law, and another man or a woman begins to declare their own authority under natural law, and so on and so on, we then begin to dismantle this human slavery pyramid system. I'm going to be sharing a powerful diagram in April, and we're going to go through the diagram. It's really incredible. And I think it's really important topic for us to discuss as well. There's 5 different levels of the pyramidal hierarchical structure that we need to become aware of. At Life Force Canada, we're all about empowering men and women in their town, the county, as that is where the power is, and that is where we need to be focusing our efforts. We need to stop voting in our provincial and federal elections, turn the other way, right? You've never been obligated to vote. You have a right to vote, but there's never been an obligation, except for the one that we create in our own mind, right? We have to look at the stories that we've been telling ourselves. Oh, if we don't vote in the government, there's going to be chaos. Just look around right now. There is so much chaos, right? And that is what the government creates. Divide and conquer, again, is their agenda. As Dean Clifford stated, you cannot beat the creators of the game at their own game. So operating in their court system will only perpetuate human slavery. As the same as voting, like I mentioned, right? Paying taxes, even staying in that fraudulent banking system. We had a great conversation last week or 2 weeks ago in regards to the different credit unions that are becoming gold backed. Well, next week we have Ray Brown, who's going to be joining us, and he is creating a sovereign bank in Canada that is for the people. I'm not sure if this episode with him will be recorded, so you want to make sure that you mark your calendar and be here, right? Let your friends know to sign up at lifeforcecanada.ca to be invited on the call. Yes, we know that we need to step into the private jurisdiction. because that's where your authority is. And therefore you can create the reality that your heart and soul are in alignment with, that is for your highest good. And that is living in sovereign towns, counties that are based in natural law. Now, before we move into our Take Back Your Mayor conversation with Sheila, we have an update from Laura Jane regarding the upcoming PMA course, which is very exciting.
Thank you, Karen. Hello, everyone. I wanted to let people know that we will be offering the Founders Private Membership Association training April the 22nd and the 29th. That's 2 Saturday afternoons from about 9 a.m. Pacific and for approximately 5 hours. And during that time, you'll learn natural law, how it applies. You will also get your foundational paperwork in order so that you can move forward with confidence in putting together your private member association. The other part that I love to let you know is that we have a private Telegram group for all those who have completed the course, and it's a very active Telegram group, and they share all kinds of fantastic information supporting each other. So that's also part of it. So I look forward to that. We have some that have already signed up from the waiting list. So seat availability is about 15 that we can accommodate. And the announcement, Karen, you'll be putting that out shortly, I'm sure.
Yes,
Okay,
tomorrow.
with the registration. Oh, fantastic. Okay. So, and I will look forward to seeing you on that day, on the 22nd and the 29th of April.
Thank you, Laura Jane. Yay.
Yay. I'm excited.
Yes, so am I. There's so many that are asking to it's the steps, right, on how to create their business in their private jurisdiction. And we also have towns that are very interested. So Laura Jane and I are going to Duffield, Alberta, because they want to learn more about what it means to create a town and put them into a private membership association. So many possibilities. Okay. I want to thank Karen Hanna for reaching out to our guest today and inviting her to be with us. So tonight we have Shelagh McFarlane joining us. Sheila ran for mayor last fall in Guelph, Ontario, because she believes that mayors, not the global mayors we have now, are the best and fastest way to take our towns back. Sheila started down the rabbit hole when she lost a home business in a fire in 2007 in Kincardine, Ontario. The corruption in the insurance business, and boy, can I relate to that, led her to the banking mortgage fraud, which led her eventually to the UN Agenda 2030 plan for the one world government. She realized these founding UN documents and the instruction guides were sent to every Canadian town in the 1990s. And the UN penetrated our city halls and surpassed our local governance. Sheila's solution is, of course, to take back your mayor. Under a true oath and obligation, a mayor under law can immediately unincorporate from these city corporations, public-private partnerships, and terminate the global agenda. Okay, Sheila, thank you so much for being here. I have a few questions and then we'll open it up to our members for a Q&A, as I'm sure they're going to have questions for you as well.
Excellent. All right, I'll try my best. I'm new at this kind of stuff, but yeah, I've been at this for a while. So
can you share about your background and why you ran for mayor of Guelph in 2022?
I started down the rabbit holes in 2006 with the insurance business and how in a fire they were going to deny a payout and how, you know, the control of the system. While that was going on, I met a man up in Kincardine named Ron Steve. He's an avid researcher from starting in the 70s. He told me that he remembers seeing the first chemtrail going over Kincardine, Ontario, which is on Lake Huron by the Bruce nuclear power plant. And that was in the early 70s. And he actually called 911 thinking it was a plane on fire. And he'd never, and that was kind of the start. But he's traced this all the way back to the Club of Rome, basically the Roman Empire kind of. He gave me the original documents that came to Canada from the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, UNCED, I think they called it, back in 92. When you go through those, and I'm going to show, I have them here and I have them on my website, and I think it's important that everybody downloads them to see how we got here, because originally Canada had just the 3 levels of government. We had federal with a prime minister, and provincial with the premier, and local with the mayor. And all of a sudden, government just became this monster tentacle thing, and nobody kind of knows what government is anymore. When I grew up, we had the telephone book, and we knew government because they were the blue pages in the middle.
Right.
And they had to answer the phone, and they had, you know, personal liability and responsibility because they were trusted public servants under a true oath of legitimate government under what lawful system we had at the time. And I honestly don't believe that we've really had a lawful system per se. We've been, and I watched some of your stuff, and I think we're on the same page kind of thing. So when that happened, and realizing, you know, that there was infiltration, and this plan was going to be downloaded right in our backyards, and we were going to be paying for it. At the time, I was in Kincardine, and the Ontario Power Generation, which had control of Bruce nuclear power plant here, which is one of the nuclear power plants in Ontario, they were having secret mayor meetings with our mayors in the area to plan to bury nuclear waste 1 kilometer from our Great Lakes. We felt, you know, everybody just had to get in there and run for council, mayor, get in there and stop this. So I ran for council and was able to canvass and campaign around the area and get the information out. I'm not political. I don't vote. I think the last time I voted federally was for Joe Clark. You know, I don't believe in the whole, you know, whatever. But local politics is different. Local government is very different because it's where you are, right? So I ran for council there, was able to get information out. We were able to just the whole area, plus anybody along the Great Lakes, were able to stop the burying of the nuclear waste. But I actually won the election. Have a picture of the count that night, and they flipped the results the next day. And I went through that whole election fraud thing of, whoa, wait a second here, and experiencing how the city CAO, which is your chief administrative officer, and your clerk, and all of these outside, unelected, unaccountable foreign people were hands-on with the ballots and the counting and the whole, like, whoa, and I saw it firsthand. And that was in 2014. And I literally gave up, thinking, well, there's no way to beat this thing. And I thought, you know, about that whole go off in the bush, get self-sufficient. Well, you do, you just,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
And I understand how people get into these whole prepper things and getting, you know, your freezer full of meat or your connections of this, but I don't believe that's a solution, number one, because they'll just peg you down like Davidians. But number two, I couldn't make sure that I was set and knowing that other people weren't. You know, this has to be for all, or it will just fester again. So I came, after I lost that up in Kincardine, I came down to Guelph. I wasn't going to get involved ever again until the COVID stuff started happening. The key for me during COVID is when I discovered how they're doing this flip, and how they're doing it is that they got the mayor to sign a local emergency order in 2 capacities, as both the CEO, head of council for the municipal corporation city, as well as mayor in his public capacity. And it's on my website as well. I don't know if you can put it in the link. It's on city letterhead. And that was the ticket during COVID, is how that mayor's signature was required still by the United Nations to start the implementation on the ground locally. It wasn't implemented from Ontario and Ford and Justin and all that. This is a global to local download. So that was the key piece that I was needed the proof, and realizing it was all done through bylaws.
Right.
You know, they literally got needles in arms using a bylaw. And if you read the Reopening Act, or if you read, and I have quite a history or a background in knowing legalese, knowing etymology, knowing how to read words, and what you have to do when there's so many definitions going on. During COVID, I just went, holy shit, that was Sustainable Development Goal number 3, which was equal access to healthcare for all. Well, that ended up being everybody must get jabbed or you lose your job and access to food. That's how it was implemented on the ground. And so that's when I realized that the key was the mayor, that they've converted him at that position, and they get him basically to transfer jurisdiction of, you know, of his subjects kind of thing into the corporation, and so that they can become property. And then we go from almost a sacred trust that you have with an elected official or a mayor to a constructed trust with the legal corporation. So I was at the truckers convoy for all of February too, and really shocked at my country, and witnessing that. We stayed until February 14, and the energy was just incredible. But when I came home, I wrote a letter and a cease and desist and a whole bunch of stuff. And I actually went to the mayor's house and knocked on his door, and handed it to him. And I said, hey, you know, you gotta stop this. This was at the time where you couldn't go anywhere without a vaccine passport. You couldn't, you know, go anywhere. I can't mask. So I was limited to, you know, Food Basics, Shoppers Drug Mart, and my meetings, right? Everything else was shut down. And so I saw last fall that we have quite the global mayor here in Guelph. He's signed on for these 15-minute cities. He's, you know, he's that whole, oh, look at my, you know, I think he's not a bright man, but and I knew he was in this for the count, and he was going to be bringing this down hard and fast. And Guelph is a really beautiful little town, university town, and had a good health system and good care for addiction and our seniors. This was the day before the election, or the closing of the nomination. And I saw that there was only 2 people running against him. One was a homeless guy, bless his heart, from downtown, the Royal City Mission. That was just, you know, because we have a huge homeless problem. But he had a learning disabilities and all that, right? But he came up with $200 to run for mayor, right? Because just how, you know, anyway, I met him. He's a really neat guy. And then there was another guy, Danny, I can't even remember the name now, who was transgender, you know, with the pronouns, very young, that whole narrative that, you know, and it was just like, oh my God. The night before, I texted a bunch of people and I said, you know, if I run for mayor, will you endorse me? Because you need 25 people to vouch for you. And they said, yeah, go for it. So I threw in my hat, but I didn't have the oomph that Chris Sky, you know, probably has, or it does have. I didn't have the campaign team behind me, nor the money. You're allowed to spend $90,000 to run for mayor, and also the freedom fighters, they don't vote, right? They've given up even municipal politics. So I was even fighting the freedom fighters, right? So, but I got like 9,000 druthers out to people's houses, and I did like a little flyer kind of thing, and
That's so great.
it was, you know, it was a phenomenal experience. I wouldn't and woke up a lot, you know, a fair number of people, and I'm glad I did. But yeah, when I realized the power now that the United Nations has through these public-private partnerships and through the tentacles of your city corporation and through these mayor secret meetings, it's like, whoa, enough. And then watching the whole the freedom movement with all the different ideas, everyone from Jane Scarf to, you know, with the Bill of Rights to like everybody's trying everything. And my position was that your mayor, that position can be both a position in law and legal. He exists there. The problem is they steal him before he can become a lawful mayor, and they steal him through a false oath to the city.
Right.
So,
well, I've never voted in my life, but I must say, having someone in my town who knew about Agenda 2030, I would have voted for you.
oh, I had some awesome response. I mean, it was just an amazing. I didn't feel alone in Guelph anymore, because as somebody that couldn't mask, I was always the only one in the grocery store, and you know, the whole bullying. And it was really nice to go door to door and find out, oh yeah, right on, oh yeah, I know about the World Economic Forum, oh yeah, I know COVID's a hoax, and oh yeah, it's like, oh, right on.
That's
you know?
so great.
And,
yes.
it was the right time. Whereas in 2014, people, you were still a conspiracy theory, and now people are seeing it. And I really wish they had done the announcement of the 15-minute city prior to the election, because that would have been a slam dunk. In any debate, it would have been, hey, you know, Cam, what the hell are you doing with this? You know, boom, on your website. And but no, they snuck it in afterwards. But
well, let's dive deeper into the Agenda 2030 paperwork. I know the moment that this pandemic hit 2.5 years ago, I knew it was Agenda 2030, and that the masks were a part of the whole satanic initiation process. I never wore one, and the majority of our members here are very knowledgeable in regards to the agenda. However, I know there are so many that are waking up and are new to all of this. Can you just give us a brief history of the Agenda 2030? I know that Karen Hanna has added the PDF in the chat, but if you can share with us in regards to the documents that were sent to the towns in 1992 to 2018.
Sure. On my website, I've got, you know, the founding document. This is the United Nations document from 1992. Okay, just look for United Nations conference. This is the one that Brian Mulroney signed Canada onto. So this one basically Canada ceased to be a sovereign nation once this was signed, and they became a member state of the United Nations. So I consider 1992 as the real start of Agenda 21, which had to evolve to the whole 2030 stuff. And in it, this is where the whole sustainable development goal was introduced, and how we had to save the environment. So it's kind of important that you read that one, and it starts to mention that it will be a local responsibility, and in order to do this, it's going to be up to you. They start to tell us that we have to change the way we govern. The next one you get is this one's called A Guide to Agenda 21. Issues, Debates, and Canadian Initiatives. And this was brought to Canada in 1993 using the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. They're not our friends, or the Association of Municipalities, or any of those. NGOs are not our friends. But basically, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities was used to bring in the agenda to all the towns and instruct them on how to partner with a private city corporation in order to help the towns implement these environmental, restrictions or, convert. So, this is getting into 1996 that they're doing this. But so the preamble of this is Agenda 21 is a dynamic program which could evolve over time. In fact, to be effective, Agenda 21 will have to exhibit a certain evolutionary dynamism in order to keep up with the constant fluctuations of the physical, social, economic, political, and cultural environment. As the preamble warns, humanity stands at a defining moment in history. We are confronted with a perpetuation of disparities between and within nations, a worsening poverty, hunger, ill health, and illiteracy, and the continuing deterioration of the ecosystems on which we depend. So they're starting, this is the one world, this is a global program or problem, so we need to take over. The next one, and this one is key, and it's on the website too. This came to every town in 1994, and it's called a municipal primer on the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. And this one is basically telling them how to set up your municipality where your city CAO, who comes to what he's trained with the Federation of the Canadian Municipalities, he comes in and he's bringing actually the global agenda to us. So this has been 20 years in the making, slowly and surely fudging the lines of what's government. Once upon a time, you walked straight into your mayor's office. Right. He was totally accountable. And I actually remember doing that to mayors. Now they've got city halls locked down right. with protection.
So speaking of mayors, how is getting the mayor under a true oath the solution?
Well, because once they are elected, and actually they're not even elected as they're running to be a head of council for the city, because the city has no authority over a mayor. The Municipal Act doesn't even have the word mayor in it, because that office and that position, it supersedes the city. So what they have to do is they've fudged it in when he's elected by proxy, because you're voting via your postal code as a legal person and an incorporated inhabitant of the city corporation. You can't vote as a man or woman, right?
Right.
So he gets in, but immediately they give him a city oath via the Municipal Act, and he becomes a CEO, and he never ever becomes a mayor of de jure. So the key is that spot before he becomes an employee of the corporation, he's holding consent of the governed. So he's head of government at that time. And that's when I felt, and I still feel, he can flip out of the legal into the lawful position that he belongs in. He's at the apex, and I use he just as the term of the office or the position, and just it's because I'm old and that's good. Well, whatever. But he's been incorporated into the city via that oath, and then once he's in there, that city is partnered with all the international corporations like ICLEI, the International Council. So your mayor never ever actually becomes a mayor. And it's interesting, sometimes he'll have that certificate with the seal and the house, crest or whatever. and he'll like do birthday wishes for people over 100, or he'll cut ribbons under that mayor capacity. But we don't seem to have that office here anymore, because this conversion of our local government, just through fraud and through just the lawyers, they merged or converted him in status into that city, and the government office and the non-government office all of a sudden became blurred. So your clerk is actually working privately for the city. Your mayor doesn't have a clerk. That's ludicrous.
Right.
Ludicrous. So the clerk is probably the key position. He sits at that spot between the private and the public, and controls everything that comes in and everything that goes out, and the minutes of the council and the agendas that come in, and the tenders. I mean, it's incredible how we've lost control, and how the chief administrative officers are just downloading the plan, taking it to council.
Right.
And that's not even our council. That's a council of the whole, and that's a whole nother blah. You have local government, which is your mayor and your councilors. And then you have municipal government, which is all that city mess, right? And so I don't believe we can fight this with lawyers or legally or legislation or any of that shit. It's just ludicrous. And when I see people trying, because I've been in through the court systems and all that, and we all have, we have to remove ourselves. And we can't do it individually. My feeling is, if we can use that existing political infrastructure that is there, have that at least stop the bleeding, the funding, the payments, because a mayor properly under a true oath comes under a whole nother can of worms. He becomes a peace officer. Right. He becomes a warden. He becomes a sheriff. He becomes a justice of the peace. He's all powerful, but he's castrated now. And it really is that oath. And in my opinion, because they needed him to sign as both the head of council and the mayor. Right?
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because, like, to clarify, a mayor is the most powerful position that they do not need a political affiliation.
No.
So, in the US, David Straight talks about this. He says the sheriff is the most powerful. He reminds us that the sheriff has more power than the FBI, than the CIA, than a corrupt corporation that tries to take over a town. But most sheriffs, and like most mayors, they are bought off and corrupted through the greed and the power and control.
Well, your lawful mayor is your sheriff, because he's the shire reeve. Right. He's the reeve of the shire. So he has that ability, not only politically, and political just means representative. It doesn't mean liberal or conservative. He's at the apex of the political, because he represents everybody within your geographical jurisdiction. And that's where I kind of get fudgy as far as what the territory is. But right now existing, the mayors have a geographical jurisdiction according to the town lines. And again, those have been blurred with all the amalgamations and the regionalizations and the districts and all of that. But yeah, he's at the apex there. And because he has the highest authority locally, he can immediately, and this is what I believe he would have to do, is establish lawful courts, swear in lawyers out of the legal bar system under a true oath to the people. And a mayor under that oath could swear in the lawyers. So we could use the existing courts, we could use the existing lawyers, but only if they become courts of law and not these commercial banks or institutions. The other thing is, he sits at the apex of the fiduciary realm. He's chief executor of the trust. So if there's, and we entrust him you know, and then whether we're meaning trust accounts or public assets or just our inherent consent. He sits at the top of that fiduciary control. So he can establish independent banks for the whole jurisdiction. And I understand that people are trying to do that, but when we try to do it, I mean, Canada is huge. We got 37 million people and we can't, I mean, I was amazed a truckers convoy could get 1 million people there, but we need to almost use this existing local, whatever it is, to flip it. And if he automatically sets up the independent co-op banks, which, you know, because we have the value, we are the value in our area, plus we have the credit rating. It's not the city corporation that has a credit rating, or not even to get into that can of worms, but so automatically property taxes could be going into this co-op, and we're not feeding that city monster. You're cutting off their money supply. But they're still responsible for the legal person because they created the incorporated
Yes.
inhabitant or the body corporate. So they'd still be on the hooks for everything in that uppercase name.
Right. Right.
But the man or the woman would be removed from that responsibility. And the mayor is also at the head of the protection, or like the sheriff. So he can swear in peace officers or real law officers, not these policy enforcers, under a true oath that are there to serve and protect the town, you know, like they used to. You know, and that all got flipped when you started having these stranger officers in your town. I grew up where you knew the freaking officers, you know, you were drinking on the back roads, you know, you better get home or I'm going to tell your dad, you know, like
Yes.
it was just, they
That is
knew
so
you, you
true.
know, they were the coach of the hockey team.
Yeah.
Well, then you start to see it like, no, they're put in spots now, and the mayor can swear in its own police, because I know Robert Menard and everybody's tried to do their own policing. So these are using our existing police, our existing, you know, infrastructure, cars and buildings, and we don't have to go off and start to do this on our own. And that's kind of where I was coming from, and why I think it would be key, not as a solution, because like I say, as chief executive, your mayor is just basically there for holding the purse strings, in my opinion. He doesn't do anything. He has no opinion on anything. It comes from the people, the consent of the people. They go to their ward councillor, like it's a pyramid up, you know, in a district kind of people, and then the ward councillors come together, and then basically your mayor just signs, you know, signs to get it tendered off or whatever, or signs the purse strings to release the funds from those trust accounts. And all of them should be very impartial. And I think, like, do what Iceland did when they flipped their government is, you know, in order to hold a position as a trusted servant, you had to have an X number of people vouch for your character. You had to be over 18. And I think that was basically it. Like, you didn't need to be anything or anyone. And I even think, you know, the less educated you are, the better, because you see the simple solutions, and law is very simple.
Yes, it is.
It is, and that's again why I think a lot of freedom fighters waste their time with these notices of liability and researching, you know, the whole whatever else there. It just no. The bottom line is that's for a person, and you're never ever going to get out of that.
We agree with you 100%.
Yeah. So like I don't see anybody else that could do that in a sweeping, fast way, and even just give us that breathing time to stop the public funds going to the private projects, because right now we are funding all these sustainable development goal projects that we're not a signatory to. Canada signed it, the corporation, but we're not on the hook for it. But we are just through presumption, assumption, partnership, and fraud. And we've never questioned it, because guess what? Our solicitor works for the city.
Right.
So he ain't going to tell us. And, you know, I went to him one time during COVID and asked him if the restrictions applied to the men and women that were attending 12-step meetings. And he came back with something like, the city does not plan to interfere with the individuals that attend the above said meeting. I mean, it was just the legalese you see. You can't play with those people. We've got to get out of that sandbox.
Yes, we do.
It's our
100%.
toys. Chris was sharing about how if he got in, he would have veto power over any of the bylaw restrictions. He could, you know, blah, blah, blah. Yes, but there will be checks and balances to that, because a mayor-in-law will always have personal liability, whereas a global mayor or a legal mayor, he doesn't have any. So there will be, a lawful mayor still can't like unilaterally decide in an executive order. It will be a governance from the bottom up.
Well, it has happened. I shared about a town in Mexico, Sharon, and they are in a violent state. I can't remember the state name. It's Michiana or something, but they stand apart from Mexico's election process. They had an uprising in 2011 as their town area was being clear cut by illegal loggers. And eventually the townspeople just decided they had had enough. They had put up with it for so long. So the local residents, they just ran off the loggers and they blockaded their entire town. They kicked out the corrupt mayor. They banished the political parties, the corrupt police, the mafia. And they said it was the infighting that had allowed the town to fall into crisis. So it was the infighting from the provincial or the state and the city, etc., because every time they wanted to change something, the election process, it was like they were just being fed these tiny bits of money, and that was just maybe fixing their roads or something. So it was keeping the villagers distracted, and they could never come together to confront major problems due to the political wall, such as the illegal logging. So now they have a council that now governs the town. I do believe it's a council of 13. Yeah. And the town has no voting box, so you cannot vote in any federal, any presidential voting campaign or whatever. They need to go to another town if they want to be a part of that process. And nice. Because they all know that all the elections are financed by corrupt corporations, right?
Yeah. They've got full control. And, you know, we've been asleep, but
yes. We're all waking up.
Yeah, we're waking up now.
Before we get into questions from our awesome members, you mentioned about Chris Sky. Now, we know that propaganda is how they control the people. And I believe it, you know, if I'm looking at a really big city, Toronto's a very big city. And yeah. I think it's going to be difficult to gain a majority in a very large city. Most of the people are not awake to the agenda and hit Chris's mission, where to me, it would be a lot easier to start in a small town. So what are your thoughts on him doing so, and what could he do to take back Toronto?
I think he knows he's got a lot of people behind him. He's charismatic. He's not afraid. He's got a heart. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Trump in that people either hate him or they love him. And I think part of that is because you have to be you have to have that kind of a personality. You're fighting against psychopaths, like, you know, who's presently in our office. So you don't get anywhere, you know, not doing that. So yeah, but like you say, it's a big city. It's a big city. And he has been saying, you know, he's needing a lot of support. I don't know what the budget is for that. Like I say, it's just getting that position, and then we can set up from there.
I like your signs in the back.
Oh yeah. Stop complying, they are lying. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move into a Q&A. So if anyone has any questions for Sheila, please raise your hand. So we're going to start with you, Toby.
Hi, Sheila.
Hi.
Is there any example in Canada yet of a town that's implemented what you're talking about?
No, the closest thing would be presently an unincorporated town, right? You know, this is what basically my idea is to unincorporate your town. Because
Right.
what your town has been incorporated into the United Nations through presumption, assumption, conversion, and fraud, right? So it's correcting that mistake, which again is a simple, fast way. Is fraud vitiates all. So we haven't been allowed to correct that mistake. But the closest thing, like Karen was talking about, would be, you know, Mexico or Iceland, where they just kick out and start all over again. And one of the things I was going to talk about is this is a perfect time to do so, is we don't have a crown. The crown is done. And
No, the
you
crown
know,
isn't done. The
well,
crown is a corporation that's registered in London, owned by the Vatican. It's not the Queen. But anyway, that's beside the point. But
yeah.
you know, you were talking about these notices of liability and all this stuff that people are doing. In 1933, was a third bankruptcy rollover period of the United States, which after 1933, after 1944, Bretton Woods Agreement is when all the other countries in the world basically came underneath the Corporation of the United States. But in there, in 1933 also, we were classified as enemies of the state. I mean, technically, because the government now is really a foreign occupying military force. So anyone who takes up any kind of a UCC, anything in the commercial arena, is akin to them taking up arms. Then they can do whatever they want to squelch that. So in order to unincorporate a town, the really interesting thing, I love that you're talking about this, because you know, it might be just as simple as starting with a ghost town and actually uh, take over what
The
used to be a
council,
town,
yeah.
and then prove this, go through and unincorporate every man and woman in that town, because
Easy.
as corporations, and Karen, these guys, it sounds like they know how to do that. So once you have an actual sovereign town with a mayor and with a real sheriff, I don't know if the sheriff works the same here as it does in the States, but I've heard this too, that the sheriff is the law. So if you have a mayor and a sheriff and unincorporated men and women in that town, then that should be a
Template.
a sovereign island.
Yeah, and then a template, and they don't even have to wait for an election. They can go and demand their mayor get under a true oath
Yes.
and unincorporate, because it's fraud. It's treason. He signed over to a foreign enemy. He signed jurisdiction not only of the geographical area, but your body. He's given over to the United Nations by his signature. So
Yeah, and I think they probably take an oath to the crown as well.
No, the oath is actually, it's funny, it's in the municipal act. The oath is to the municipality and the city. They mentioned King Charles kind of in the back. I meant to print it out. I think, I mean, I can send it to people, or just Google the oath, the mayor's oath, or whatever. No, head of council's oath in the municipal act. But they swear to the municipality, which is the city, because municipality doesn't mean that jurisdiction, that it means
no, it's a
corporation,
corporation.
right? So
yeah, and that corporation is a subsidiary corporation of the province, and then of the Canada Corporation, and then of the crown.
right.
So if they're swearing to any allegiance to any corporate entity, then they're traitors, like you said.
They're private. They you know, because you can't, the public private is fraud. You can't serve your people under trust and equity and compassion, but also serve the corporation and try to improve investments for the stakeholders or profit, you know. So those are two competing motives, and he's automatically in conflict of interest. So
But
I
then
mean,
there
the whole
are no,
thing just falls apart at our municipal level. That's where it falls apart, and that's why this was implemented at the local level. One, they're bypassing national and provincial legislation or any other globally legislation. They're going straight on the ground. They're targeting local elected, you know, patsies basically, because I don't know about you, but Guelph, the ones they elect are pretty freaking stupid and
Yeah.
gullible, you know. Oh, so a global mayor title would put a big feather in their cap. So if it's happening here, then it can be flipped here. So yes, exactly, unincorporate. And that as soon as you do, you unincorporate from the whole legal realm. No longer are lawyers in charge, and no longer are you a legal person. You are, like you say, a man and a woman that has, you know, your consent to be governed.
well, but if everybody in that town still has a social insurance number and a driver's license, then there are no men and women in that town technically.
Yeah, we don't need to do that anymore. We can just delete the social insurance number, the driver's license, et cetera, everything.
Yeah, it's
So-
all gone,
so if-
baby.
So you want to come? Do you want to come to Alberta and start in a little tiny hick town? And
Oh my
do this?
God. I have had, you know, the election, what was my campaign? September, October, and then the election was, I have had more calls in the last 2 months, ever since 15-minute cities were announced. I've had
Yeah.
calls a lot from Alberta, huge from Alberta, but even some in the States. I had one in Saudi Arabia, UK, Australia, and people are kind of clicking to that you've got to split your public-private partnerships and that unincorporate yourself, because as soon as you're incorporated, you're under that legal realm. And how I explained it when I was campaigning, I don't know if I brought the picture here, but let me see if I can find it. That there's two things going on. Well, I'll find it later, but
we are actually bankrupt corporations. We're not just corporations, but we're in bankruptcy because Canada is bankrupt, the US is bankrupt. Technically, it was supposed to be out of bankruptcy in 1999 or 2003, but I think it was called there was a section 39 and section 40. They're not called sections, but the 40 extended the bankruptcy indefinitely, the emergency indefinitely. So not only are we incorporated, we are bankrupt incorporated.
exactly.
So we have no rights at all unless we unhook ourselves from that and step back into being a man or woman with our inalienable rights that we gave up when we accepted the citizenship and the driver's license and the government issued ID.
Right.
So-
But you don't want to lose your property, and you don't want to lose everything that's tied to that legal person, which is why your
yeah.
mayor would be your public trustee. So he would have public assets or property within that trust. Again, that trust can't be accessed without the consent of the beneficiaries of that trust. In a way, you know, kind of mixing laws here, but it would be protected from any, you know, commercial takeover or the central banking system. So it's perfect timing again, because if the towns or the nations are all bankrupt, then we start fresh.
Thank you.
Thanks, Toby.
Great conversation. I love it. It's awesome.
Love to come to Alberta. Love to.
Lenlyn, go ahead.
Hi. It might seem kind of obvious that most mayors are not upfront about what's going on about this agenda. And every town seems to have some awake people, as our town does. I'm in Powell River. And I know that this agenda was in place with the last mayor and council, who all but 2 of them got voted out, and we have a new mayor. And a couple months ago, he actually invited anybody who wanted to come to one of our theaters just talk to him and ask him whatever questions we wanted. So, which I thought was so unusual. And so a lot of people got up and they just said what the issues were with them, with the town, which is kind of the usual, but there's no talk about this agenda. But anyway, I just thought, and he said, well, if you want to come and talk to me, you just make an appointment. So, I would feel fine about making an appointment with him and talking about unincorporating. But I guess my question is, are there any other mayors who are upfront about what's really going on?
Well, I confronted John Tory back in 2012 or something when, or I don't forget when the Bank of Canada, we were doing the lawsuit with Rocco Galati and Comers, and I was in Toronto, and I confronted him about, what's going on, and he knows, but, kind of gave me that, yeah, I've heard that before, and then just walked away from me. When I confronted my mayor, I think he just doesn't know. When I was running for mayor, I was constantly at the clerk and at the solicitor to say, okay, where's my oath? Where's the oath for the mayor? And they kept directing me to the Municipal Act. And I kept saying, no, that's a private oath. And the city can't swear in a public official. So I think the agendas just come in so soft in the Municipal Act. Remember, it was instituted in 2001, which is basically the Canadian Patriot Act. It locked us down, and, the United Nations basically took control. So 2001, we're looking at 21 years. So over that time, we just take the oath in the Municipal Act. We take the oath in the Municipal Act, and people forgot that there's an Oath of Allegiance Act, which is a federal way of swearing in a sheriff. They forgot what an oath is almost. So I don't know. It's really hard for me to tell. I'm sure there's some mayors that are into it, up to their teeth, and others that are just totally blind to it, just thinking they're doing the right thing. And this is, the sustainable development goals for Canada, and we're supposed to do this. And I don't know. I really don't know. It's pretty obvious to me what's going on. And I'm not too sure. Go and talk to your mayor.
Thanks.
Thank you. Great questions, Lennon.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to mention that I think it was Toby that asked about sheriffs in Canada. I did attend Theo Fleury's Fire and Ice event the other night, and I met a sheriff there, and I asked him, do the sheriffs in Canada have the same authority as they do in the US? And he said, no, they do not. So I do believe that, it is the mayor. If we can find a mayor that is following moral law.
And again, those are legal sheriffs too, right? They're following the bar and the legal person and the sin and the uppercase. So we don't have law. So this, like Toby was saying, is like, yeah, this is a first time, but it's very simple to do, really, because as long as you're not an entity of the municipal corporation, they have no authority over you. Exactly. So there's your sovereignty right there.
Yeah, that's great. Brian, go ahead.
Hello. There's been a subject that I've brought up a few different times, and it seems like you may have an answer. In the education system, there's a lot of parents that are disgruntled and not comfortable putting their children in the education system, public system. And I've been in some of the think tanks regarding this, and I've been wondering, how do we get our money out of the public system so that we can divert it to, say, homeschooling or a different system? Do you know anything about that?
No idea. No idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you might be somebody I could ask.
If you had a lawful mayor, that all could be like set up in your individual districts. You could be totally withdraw from that school system. Remember, we elect school board trustees. right? So they're trusted servants as well, and they can be put under law and direction of the parents that are, want their kids, how they want them educated. Or you've got control of the money in an independent co-op bank. So why don't you run your local government under like a GoFundMe? So you have X number of property tax dollars. You want to throw $200 to homeschooling, you want to throw you would be voting with your money almost, right? You would have a say in what you want, and you can set up individual committees. My idea was to have a town hall, at least one town hall within your ward or your individual area, and your town hall could have everything set up there, from like a homeschooling setup, could have an auto body shop there. They could have a tool library there, could have a Tim Hortons type community cafeteria there that the kids run, could have, everything in that town hall. If everybody's spending $10 at Tim Hortons a day, and we had a town hall where we were going and throwing that in times what, 100 or 200,000 people in your, whoa, that's a lot of money. You get the kids running we could just endless possibilities, but not under a legal where we are now. So how to do it now? No idea. People ask me, what do you do in the council meetings? No idea. We don't belong in there. We don't belong in this education system. It's Prussian, it's to teach, obey, it's under the global agenda. I would have thought teachers would be a little bit more vocal. I'm very surprised, but I don't see a solution. Like I say, using the existing system or pleading with the existing system almost. So I can't help you there. I know that there's a lot of, independent people setting up their own private homeschooling stuff, but I'd like to see it on a bigger level where we have that daycare in the town halls. We have public transportation to take them to the town halls. We have everything there. We have the fitness center there. We have, and all of it covered under this independent co-op. We have that trust account where the homeless could go to the grocery store. And I don't know if you remember Robert Menard and he was doing accepted for value. We could have the homeless go to the grocery store, sign the receipt. That receipt goes to the city, and we pay for that. They go to a restaurant, they get a meal, they sign that, and they don't need a postal code, and helps the restaurant business. Doesn't cost us. We're paying what, $300,000 for a planner and a developer and a lawyer and an architect. We have tons of money that could all be taken care of, but unless you have that control, and then like you say, we go to town from there, because everybody has amazing ideas, and that actually took up a lot of time on campaign was, I want to start this, I want to do this, I want to do that. Yeah, that's great. We could have our own public Uber system where there's somebody with a car can go and drive someone to a doctor's appointment, like lots of stuff, whatever you're interested in. And the education system really does need to be addressed. It's criminal what's happening there, criminal. And but even just the whole green program and the whole carbon program being downloaded to them, even let alone the whole transgender stuff, it's just insane. And I really feel for parents. It's, and why I'm so vocal is unless we put the brakes on this freaking system and stop, it's just going to get more and more momentum. They really came down hard on us in COVID, and they proved to us what they could do, and they used our education systems for sure to do it.
Oh, you're speaking our language.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's just, so many possibilities.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Brian. Yeah, it's sad in regards to the education piece. We have our lifeforceeducation.ca website's a directory, because we knew that there's a lot of teachers and parents that were exiting the school system, but it's amazing how many of them are still so asleep to what's happening and so fearful of change. But yeah, we have our education forum, and Sheila is our amazing facilitator, and she brings on different experts that are homeschooling, unschooling, et cetera, right? So yeah, it's a powerful pillar. And yes, and that's what Life First Canada is all about. Like, we're just really here to educate everyone on how to get out of the public jurisdiction completely, the legal system, all of it, and to truly step into the private, because there, as a man, as a woman, we have our rights, and life will be free once we take the steps to cross over the bridge. But again, it's our addictions to the corrupt matrix. There's the addictions that we still have, the beliefs that we need to be plugged in. It's a journey. Christina, go ahead.
Yes, you're definitely speaking our language. I think what you have is, this kind of utopian vision that we so many of us have. And you've mentioned a couple of things like Iceland. And Iceland, they kept this out of the national news as much as they could, because if everyone found out how they did it and what they did, so it was very interesting how it never got out there without you having to dig for that information. And I feel that, yes, like Canada's such a big country and we're so spread out. And yet, if we had a group, a collective like this, and we unincorporated ourselves first, because I think that's the first step. Everybody's getting educated on this now, but still, I haven't done it. I've known this stuff for 20, 30 years, like you've known it. And yet there's always this block, because if you completely remove yourself from the matrix by giving back your birth certificate, I actually filed a death certificate on my name, because it's already a dead entity, right?
Yeah, you're dead twice.
Twice now, so it's dead. Because I lost my house in foreclosure, and I think that this is what we're going to see coming in the next while, is that which is going to, all systems are collapsing because they're unsustainable. They're built on, like you just mentioned, 50 or 100 frauds that are happening in every, education, in government, in every level of government, and it's all just money going, from hand to hand kind of thing. And we are the biggest resource on the planet. We're the biggest resource and we're being used as chattel, basically. Mm-hmm. So can we not, before, unincorporating a town, shouldn't we all unincorporate it ourselves simultaneously? It used to be when people did that, they ended up in jail and whatnot. You can't, you can't drive a car or whatever without a license and all those kind of things. But I think that's the first thing that we have to do, is really unincorporate ourselves.
You need the legal person to operate commercially, right? Presently anyway. So the beauty of this solution is that as a man and a woman would govern your elected officials, your local government, and then your local government governs the civil servants commercially, handles the money end of it. So you could still operate as a man, and you're both capacities. Right, you exist in legal and law, so you don't want to lose that uppercase name right now, because nobody knows what it is. It is but we need it almost to operate in that maritime admiralty, and so everything is there. But we don't want to take the liability or the surety of that, because we don't own that thing. That's just a tool to help us operate commercially. So what my plan is, that you unincorporate yourself. But you also remain, you have like a legal type person that can be used for the services provided. You know what I mean?
So your legal person is or your lawful person is representing your legal person kind of thing. So you're still, you're the man or woman. I am the man or the woman representing this legal entity.
Yeah, you almost, if I kind of think of it as that, if that uppercase is, say, a trust account or a bunch of money, then me as a beneficiary, I'd say, I want a car. I would say to the trustee, and he would access that amount of money that's in that trust account, that legal realm almost. So that's the beauty of the mayor, is he can be both in law and serve a man and a woman and protect a man and a woman, but he can also serve and protect that trust account, that legal entity, and the public assets that we have to. So there has to be a change in mentality. We have to stop thinking community, my community, your community. We have to think more like unity and cooperation and coordination, which
That sounds like the feminine way.
well, it's more of how the natives and the tribal councils
Tribal,
operated. And I keep coming back to how, you know, I take, for example, Alcoholics Anonymous. It's an organization that it is full of egos and controlling people, but they've been able to operate and govern themselves for 100 years without anybody taking over, without changing anything, where everybody is all equal, because one, no money involved. And two, you as a trusted servant, it's a position of integrity. You know, once that's restored, because you're responsible for the group that's underneath you or the ward that's underneath you. So the power is in that bottom, that individual who has a representative at a group level who you know, and goes up. But it's never, I think even Rockefeller said when it was being originated, he said, don't mix money in with this, because again, you either have to serve God or mammon, one or the other. God is do no harm in law, or mammon is commercial. That's kind of how I see it. So, but you need both right now, because we can't go right back to barter, right? We need a form of an exchange somehow. So we need to be able to go and purchase things, but we need to pull you know, that property or that ownership component out of it. We don't belong in the legal realm, because you have no personal liability there. And your officials, your trustees definitely don't belong there. And I don't see how to get them out, because we don't own the courts. We don't own anything anymore. But you can't own your mayor under an oath, and he lives in your town. And I like that idea of starting with a little one. Guelph had 135,000, and yeah, it was a fair challenge. But a little town could easy peasy. And like you say, it's a template, you know, once one town does it globally, because this was all implemented the same way, global to local download. So everybody could do it. I'm sovereign and responsible, but I still need to be cooperating. I'm still, you know, what do you call that? A social animal or whatever, right? We still have to share and participate in the economic commercial environment, but we also have to have the ability to determine which contracts we agree with, which, you know, what we are a part of, and yeah.
So true.
Well, thanks for having all the courage.
Thank you, Sheila. And I just want to share in regards to, I think somebody mentioned too in the chat about driver's license, that even though the driver's license is under your false identity, just because you have a license doesn't mean that you're operating under that title all the time. You can just, you know, we have a false identity over here, but it's of course not who we are. So yes, we're taking steps across the bridge, and we're going to go back into the public, and then go over to the private, and go back over to the public, until we have the skill sets and have shifted into the new earth. But yeah, it's going to take a while for all of us to get there. And for me too, it's like, I have no desire to unincorporate myself, or, you know, get my live birth certificate or claim it, whatever it is, right? Because I know it's a fake identity. I don't need to put any money into getting my fake identity.
It's paper. It's paper. It's
It
two-dimensional.
is.
And we don't exist there. And we
Yes.
don't belong there. And that's why, you know, when they ask for identification, if you think this two-dimensional piece of paper is identical to
Exactly.
this,
Yes.
so
My identity is right here.
yeah, I never agreed with going and asking permission and getting pieces of paper to say that I'm legitimate. To me, it was
Exactly.
like in the Wizard of Oz when what was it, the lion got, you know, wanted courage, and so they gave him a certificate saying that he had
Yes.
courage. Well, he had it all along. You don't need that piece of paper to you know, and who's going to recognize that paper? Like, you know,
Exactly.
God. Like, so no, I never. And it's a lot, again, you're making lawyers rich by playing their paper games. So
Yes, yes.
when
Claiming
I
our
was-
sovereignty. That's all we need to
Yeah.
do. Stand in it. Thank you. Laura Jane, go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Sheila, you're singing our song. And the one thing that I really am looking at in terms of, I do a lot of work with helping people move into the private and get their business out of the corporate jungle and start dealing back with people, not with people, but with men and women, and dealing with having that relationship. You know, and to me, this is what we're talking about when we talk about towns. We're talking about reestablishing the relationships and the trust. And what I would say is we're actually moving forward to create lawful towns, not legal towns, lawful towns, which is what they always used to be. And straddling that public and private right now is difficult, but it's also a necessary component. So I love the one thing that you said was building a template. And I think that's what we're doing, where we're going out and talking to towns that want to become private communities. And in becoming a private community, you still have to look at all the infrastructure, look at all of the things that you need to support your community. So the template component really is what I love, because when you can achieve a success story, you need to share that, you know, broadly. So the one thing I would love to do is stay in touch with you, because I think that working on that kind of template and looking at the work that we're doing with Life Force Canada in building that parallel society, and the first step is unincorporating. It's the only way you get away from your dead entity. You know, it's the only place where you're real. And where you can make a real difference with real men and women and save the future generations, because that's where we're investing right now. A lot of us have survived, you know, the corrupt system, but we don't want this for our future generations. We want our future generations to understand what sovereignty is all about and what it means to have integrity, to have honesty, to know that the fruits of your labor are yours to share with as you wish. So I just wanted to say thank you for being so active and for bringing that forward in Guelph, of all places. I mean, I know Guelph. I went to the University of Guelph, so for some programs. So it's a town that I am surprised that you got as far as you did, to be honest with you, because it took a lot of courage. But I think that you're absolutely right. And I love your presumption, assumption, conversion, and fraud. That is such a beautiful tagline, because that's exactly what the public system has turned into.
Yeah.
You know?
And we've never questioned, let alone corrected the mistake. So,
Right.
you know,
Well,
which
we are now.
Yeah. And they've just gone on on assumption, and it's just, and that's how I got past the restrictions, is basically say, hey, do these apply to men and women?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. See ya. And the beauty part of AA is that they are men and women. They have no surety. They have no last name. They're anonymous. So they can't even, you know, how are you going to write them a ticket? So it was a beautiful experiment to see the power of going back to the lawful name.
Right.
What you're going to do.
Yeah.
I have no last name for you to write a ticket to. So,
But what would be really interesting is to see how much of the system that is existing can be brought under a lawful city. under a lawful community, and then work from there. So that I agree with you, to start completely from scratch can be a little difficult, but we have to have a really solid bridge to allow us to move that way, so that the men and women can take control back, but without destroying what exists. So it's like, you know, we have certain structures that we do need to work within.
Yes.
But those would be structures we'd be putting in even if we were starting from scratch. You have your town hall, you have your all of your men and women there. They talk about what they want. They talk about what kind of schooling they want. They talk about what kind of wellness centers they want, not the disease care system, but the wellness, you know. So there's lots of ways that we can move forward. So I do want to be in touch with you, because I'd like to run some ideas by you. I think that it's very potent in terms of learning the existing structure, because you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You sure need to give it a good scrub, because right now it's pretty dirty, you know. So
absolutely.
yeah, because the parallel society is going to be separate. It's not dragging the dirt with us. It's really bringing and making sure that what is put in place is strong, and it's also something that's for the people, by the people, with the people.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. And follows natural law or follows.
Absolutely. Well, it's natural law that we ascribe to, which
Yeah.
is why I have no interest in getting back a birth certificate and all that stuff. I know I was born. I'm living, breathing proof, you know. So nobody needs to tell me that. You know, my mother told me several times I was born. But anyway, so thank you very much for being here, and we will be in touch. All
Yeah,
right?
for sure. I'd love it. Yeah. Like I say, it was a kind of a one-man show, but I'm really glad I did it. And everybody has a piece, and you know, we win all. We're winning. It's just how do we? I don't want to leave anybody behind. That's kind of where I'm at. And you know,
the people that are ready to move will move.
yeah.
And those that aren't ready yet will just see how wonderful it is, and they will eventually move.
Yeah, exactly. Build it, and they will come. You know,
You got it,
like,
Buckminster Fuller. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sheila. And I yield.
Thank you, Laura Jane. Great questions. Love it.
Thanks.
Sherry, go ahead.
I just had a thought, Sheila, that I could see something online called Mayor's School, and you could be teaching thousands of people across Canada how to become a mayor, or
That's
or how to
brilliant,
hold-
Sherry.
how to hold your mayor accountable, so that it's not, and then you could have 10 people in a town who've all taken your course running for mayor.
Yeah.
And holding the mayor accountable. But that's an online course that you could actually create that I think could get some traction.
Good
I
idea.
love that idea. That's brilliant. Thank you, Sherry.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Yay. Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, Sheila, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And yeah, so appreciate this. And I do know that this conversation is going to continue. So, Sherry, that's exactly what I had been thinking. I was thinking about our Life Force Academy and how we can talk to Sheila about creating something for us. So yeah, that Mayor's School is great. And and thank you again, Sheila.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's great. Yeah, I love I love learning. I love researching, and you know, it's really neat to see how we've all can fit this together.
Thank you.
And thank you, Karen Hanna, once again for introducing us to Sheila. This is so great. And I agree with you in regards to how I see so many freedom movements that are stuck in the political arena. They think their answers are there, or they think that they need to create a lawsuit, you know, and the legal system is going to save us. And we here do not agree with that whatsoever. To me, it's like, it does not matter what they change in their jurisdiction. They can create so many bylaws, they can create this statute, whatever act, whatever bill they want to create. And we just have to ask ourselves the question, does it apply to a man or a woman? No. And then we just walk away.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're changing the rules all the time. I
They
mean,
are, but
even
it's-
in the municipal act, they have a section called, code of conduct that basically says, we'll determine our own code of conduct. Well, how do you play ball with those kind of people? So get the hell out of town. And I've had calls from like people like Amanda Ridding, and I think she's doing, trying to go after the council and get involved in the whole corporation. It's like, don't even go there, man. Well, number one,
Exactly.
at best case scenario, they won't answer you. They'll just ignore you. And worst case scenario, you're just going to waste time and stress yourself out and go gray. So like, you got to think outside of that box, but
Yeah.
stay, but still incorporate that box, like not totally leave it. So it's, yeah, no, it's an interesting time. I think we can start right from scratch, but.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Sheila, for being here. We love
Yeah.
your spirit, your heart, and you're welcome to join us on any one of our calls at lifefirstcanada.ca. We do have quite an amazing lineup of experts that we listen into, and we are all here on the path, and we've all never been here before. So we're all learning as we go and
Yeah.
implementing what speaks to the heart and the soul, and knowing that we're just creating a new reality, a new earth based on natural law. And we're all here to live a prosperous and free life. So thank you again, Sheila.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's, yeah, it's been great.
Thank you, everyone, for standing for freedom. This is such an amazing opportunity for all of us to really step into really exploring our own passions and our own skills as we move forward, because we're going to be moving out. If any of you are employees, or you're employed or self-employed, etc., the more we begin to unplug from that public jurisdiction and we begin to come over here and begin to step into creativity and your passion, and letting go of the idea of income and stepping into compensation, right? That's a huge transition, but it's something that we all need to begin looking at as we move forward. Lots of love, everyone. Thank you again. Together we rise.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Night.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Night.
Bye. Bye.
Night. Thank you.
Night.